welcome back to DFC Books.
Today we're launching into a deep dive,
Mhm.
and it's into one of the most powerful, and I would argue one of the most uniquely disturbing tragedies ever written.
Yeah.
We're talking about Euripides' Medea.
And we are tackling this ancient text through the razor-sharp lens of Robin Robertson's acclaimed modern translation. So this isn't just a quick summary. Our mission for you, for the learner, is to really gain a deep, extensive understanding of this foundational work.
Exactly.
We're going to navigate the treacherous relationships, the ancient context, and the just utterly shocking progression of the plot. We want to make sure we extract every key insight for you from this source material.
And this play, it just resonates so powerfully. I mean, it deals with the most elemental and destructive human forces, betrayal, gender war, lethal revenge.
Right.
It was first performed in Athens in 431 BC, and it caused a sensation, maybe even a scandal, really, because of its complexity and especially because of its ending.
And the sources say it feels uniquely disturbing and wholly contemporary, even now. It captures this kind of like marital friction.
Yeah.
It just feels so volatile, even today.
It does.
I was really struck by the praise for Robertson's translation. It's hailed as, was it urgent, contemporary, and eloquent. It manages to bring that classical weight, but without sounding all dusty and old.
And Robertson himself, they call him a master of the dark and wounded.
Which seems like the absolute perfect artistic temperament to handle Medea's psyche, doesn't it?
It's an excellent match, yeah. The source material really emphasizes that a great tragedy like this, it demands constant retranslation. Because each age, needs to hear that brutality and that sadness in its own cultural voice.
I see.
And Robertson, he just achieves that balance perfectly. He makes sure the language sounds fresh and immediate, but it still holds on to that deep moral seriousness of Euripides.
Okay, so before we jump into what is basically a domestic horror show, we really need to lay some of the historical groundwork. I think the context of ancient Athenian performances, well, it's absolutely crucial to understanding why Euripides structured the play the way he did.
Exactly. We're talking about Euripides, who lived from about 485 to 406 BC. He's, enshrined as one of the three great dramatists, right alongside Aeschylus and Sophocles.
And his lifetime, it just encompassed the absolute zenith of Athenian culture. It starts right after those huge victories over the Persians.
Yeah, and the timeline here is so critical. His life coincided with that great, fertile half-century of intellectual and artistic explosion, but, and this is a big but, it ended right at the start of the great civil conflict, the Peloponnesian War.
And Medea itself was first performed in 431 BC.
The very year the war broke out.
Wow. So this was a time when this immense civic pride was just beginning to curdle into doubt and conflict. And Euripides' work, which is often pretty iconoclastic, it reflected that underlying tension.
That challenging nature probably explains why, despite how we see him now, he only won first prize at the Dionysian Festival 4 times, and one of those was posthumous.
So not exactly a crowd pleaser in his own time.
Not always. Unlike the devout patriotism you often see in Aeschylus, Euripides interrogated the gods. He questioned traditional heroism, and he gave a voice to the marginalized, especially women, in ways that contemporary Athenians sometimes found pretty uncomfortable.
The sources even mention this traditional, dramatically violent end to his life, that he was allegedly torn apart, kind of like characters in his own plays.
Right, either by dogs, like Actaeon,
Or by women, which is reminiscent of Pentheus in the Bacchae. A very mythic death for a dramatist who dealt so intimately with mythic rage.
it certainly fits his reputation.
Yeah.
Now let's get into the mechanics of the tragedy itself, because these physical constraints, they really dictated the dramatic flow, particularly that explosive finale.
Okay, so we're talking about the Theater of Dionysus. It was huge, right? Open air, holding maybe 15, 20,000 people.
And overwhelmingly male citizens, yeah.
Right.
And the stage was laid out very specifically. You had the raised stage, and behind it, the skene. That's the stage building. In Medea, the skene is the house that Jason and Medea share in Corinth.
So everything we hear Medea say in those early scenes, it's coming from behind those doors.
Which just emphasizes her isolation, her imprisonment.
And then below that, you have the circular orchestra. That's where the chorus of Corinthian women would sing and dance. Yeah. And they're on stage the whole time.
Constantly, they're the voice of civic conscience.
Okay, so Euripides used a couple of key technical elements. The first one you mentioned is the ikiklema, the wheeled platform.
Yes, because violence was almost never shown live.
Yeah.
It was considered improper. So murders, deaths, they all happened inside the scheme.
Inside the house.
Right. And then the platform was wheeled out to present this silent, static tableau of the horror that just occurred.
That is going to be incredibly important for the infanticide scene later on. It transforms something you just hear about into a horrifying visual indictment.
Absolutely. And the second device is the famous machine, the crane.
The deus ex machina, the god from the machine.
Exactly. This crane was used for the entrance or exit of gods. It was usually deployed to sort of resolve a human knot that the characters themselves couldn't untangle.
And that machine, that's what provides the ultimate controversial finale for Medea, isn't it? It's the very thing that guarantees the moral ambiguity of the ending.
It is. And finally, you have the chorus. They weren't just passive. The source calls them the decent objective view. They represent the interested spectators, the fellow citizens.
So they offer ethical and religious commentary.
They do, but they also serve as Medea's confidants. This allows her to reveal her innermost plans to the audience while she's still keeping up this facade of, civic morality to everyone else.
This brings us perfectly to our deep character dive. I think it's so important to remember that Athenian audiences, they arrived knowing the full bloody backstory of Jason and Medea. So we need to catch you, the listener, up on exactly why these two are already so morally compromised before the play's first line is even spoken.
Let's start with Jason, the quintessential Greek hero who is about to become the quintessential Greek villain. His journey began in Iolcos, where his throne was usurped by his uncle, Peleus.
And Peleus feared a man wearing a single sandal.
Right. And the great irony, of course, is that Jason lost that sandal performing a simple act of piety. He was helping an old woman across a river.
Who turned out to be the powerful goddess Hera in disguise.
Exactly. So by helping Hera, he gained her protection, which, and this is a major spoiler, he later throws away completely by betraying Medea.
The betrayal is just multi-layered, isn't it? When Jason arrives, Peleus tests him. He asks him what he would do to a man prophesied to kill him.
And Jason, in this moment of youthful hubris and political naivete, says he'd send that man to fetch the impossible golden fleece from the distant barbarian land of Colchis.
He basically creates his own lifelong curse in that one sentence.
He does. He undertakes the quest, gathers the Argonauts, and reaches Colchis. And that's where King Aedes sets him these famous, impossible tasks, yoking fire-breathing bulls, sowing dragon's teeth.
And then surviving the warriors that spring up from them.
And here is the absolute critical point that you have to understand. Jason did not succeed through his own strength or cunning. He didn't. He succeeded because Medea, the daughter of King Aedes, a sorceress, was made to fall madly, possessively in love with him by Hera.
So Hera was trying to get revenge on Peleus.
Correct. So Jason didn't win Medea's heart. She was bewitched into committing treason for his sake.
Wow, that reframes everything. Jason's entire heroic legacy, it rests on supernatural intervention and the devastating, unasked-for sacrifice of a foreign woman.
It does. Which brings us to Medea, whose own resume of treachery and murder is, well, it's lengthy, and all of it was committed for this man.
Her initial acts are just terrifying. First, she betrayed her father and bewitched the serpent guarding the fleece. That's how Jason got his prize.
But the second act, on the run, is the one that really confirms her unique ruthlessness. To slow her pursuing father, Aeetes, Medea murdered her own brother, Apsyrtus.
And this wasn't just a quick kill in a battle or something.
No, not at all. She dismembered his corpse and then tossed the pieces into the sea one by one, right into the wake of the Argo.
Oh my God.
The sheer psychological weight of betraying her own bloodline to that degree is just enormous. This forced her heartbroken father to stop the chase to retrieve his son's remains for a proper burial.
Which bought Jason and Medea their escape.
She sacrificed everything, her family, her home, her own humanity, really, all to save him.
And the violence only escalated when they got back to Iolcos, to Jason's homeland. Peleus was still ruling, and Jason's father had been killed.
So Medea orchestrates the murder of Peleus, Jason's usurping uncle. She uses her magical deception, the infamous cauldron trick. She persuades Peleus's 3 daughters that she can rejuvenate their father.
How does she prove it?
She cuts up an old ram, boils the pieces, and produces a frisky young lamb.
And the daughters, just desperate to restore their elderly father, they fall for it.
They're tricked into cutting him up and boiling his pieces, believing they were making him young again. The betrayal and the horror of that act forced the couple to flee Iolcos immediately. No one would offer them sanctuary.
So they settle in Corinth, they start a family,
Oh.
and that is where the play begins. And this extensive backstory is just so essential because, as you said, Euripides immediately subverts the expected Greek stereotypes right from the start.
He does.
So let's unpack that subversion. Jason, who's supposed to be the civilized Greek hero, he comes across as nothing more than a calculating, self-interested politician.
Precisely. The sources call him a calculating liar, insensitive, vain, and complacent. The crucial point the Athenian audience would grasp immediately is that by breaking his oath to Medea, his marriage oath, which was sworn by the gods, he violated a very serious religious and civic obligation.
For Athenians, an oathbreaker was just morally bankrupt. It didn't matter how successful he was politically.
Right. And meanwhile, Medea, the exiled Colchian, the barbarian female, she's suddenly elevated in terms of honor above Jason.
How so?
Well, Medea's emphasis on loyalty, on honor, on upholding sacred bonds, it makes her seem ironically more masculine than Jason the Greek. Euripides just flips the script. Jason becomes scheming, shallow, and increasingly passive, valuing prosperity over purity.
And Medea becomes empowered, ascendant, and thoroughly active. She's driven by honor, even if that honor leads her to commit these monstrous acts.
It sets the stage for a conflict where, yeah, both protagonists are morally flawed, but Medea's rage is rooted in a betrayal of sacred law. Jason's betrayal is rooted in pure self-interest.
A conflict that, when it plays out in Corinth, just destroys every institution around them.
It does.
Let's move directly into the play's action then. Let's do the scene-by-scene analysis, detailing the characters, and really highlighting the most important events that propel the tragedy forward.
Okay, the play opens with Scene 1, The Gathering Storm. It's set entirely by the nurse's lament.
And the setup is chilling. Jason has abandoned Medea and their sons for royal bed. He's marrying the young princess, the daughter of Creon, the king of Corinth. Medea is trapped.
The nurse is our first source of information, and she paints this harrowing picture of Medea's despair. She describes Medea refusing food, staying in her room, crying out to the gods of justice. She's completely deaf as a stone or a wave in the sea.
And the nurse is afraid of her temper.
She fears her vile and violent temper, yeah. She calls her a wild animal, and she's basically prophetic about the violence to come. She knows Medea is too clever and too wounded to just sit there and mourn.
She is doubly disadvantaged as a female and a foreigner, facing total isolation. And her worst fears are confirmed immediately when the tutor arrives.
And this is most important event number 1, the banishing rumor. The tutor brings devastating news. King Creon, fearing Medea's sorcery and her temper, intends to banish Medea and her children from Corinth. Immediately.
So this isn't just about losing Jason anymore. This is complete social and legal annulment. It leaves her with no protection, no means, in a foreign land.
It escalates the situation instantly, from marital distress to a matter of life and death. It forces Medea's hand. The storm has arrived.
Okay, scene 2. This is where we get the first direct confrontation. Medea speaks to the chorus, and she gives this powerful speech lamenting the hardship of women and foreigners.
She does. She outlines the injustice of a patriarchal society where a man can easily exchange a wife, but a woman is forever bound to a single choice. She's really emphasizing the helplessness of her situation.
And then Creon arrives, and he's very direct about his motives. He fears her intelligence and her evil arts.
It's not just her rage. He fears her intelligent, calculating anger. He says, in essence, that a clever woman who keeps her own counsel is far more dangerous than one who just shouts. He knows Medea is capable of plotting.
But Medea, she immediately transitions into this brilliant, chilling manipulation.
She does. She claims she accepts the marriage and only hates Jason. She begs Creon for a single day, just one day, to arrange for her children's welfare before they're exiled. She completely weaponizes her motherhood against his paternal instincts.
And Creon hesitates. He senses the danger.
Oh yeah, he even admits he fears he's making a mistake. But he's swayed by her seeming humility and her appeal as a desperate parent. And this is most important event number 2. Creon grants the reprieve.
He gives her a single day, warning her that she and the children must leave tomorrow or die, and that one day is all she needs.
The moment Creon is gone, she drops a facade. She mocks his foolishness to the chorus and reveals that this single day is enough time to turn all 3 enemies, Jason, Creon, and the princess, into corpse meat.
The plot moves from just contemplation to active execution.
Exactly. And scene 3 is the crucial moment where Medea secures her sanctuary and therefore guarantees her freedom to commit murder.
This is where Aegeus, the king of Athens, just conveniently arrives. He stops in Corinth on his way back from the oracle of Apollo, seeking advice on his childlessness.
And he's received that famous cryptic riddle, "Do not untie the wineskin's neck until you return to your native land." Now, for the Athenian audience, this riddle held immense significance.
Right, because Aegeus is heading to Trison to have the riddle interpreted by the wise Pythias.
And what does that riddle actually mean? It means he must not sleep with any woman until he gets home, or the child conceived will become the future hero of Athens, Theseus. Aegeus is supposed to remain sealed, so to speak.
But he doesn't.
He inevitably gets drunk at Pythias' palace and sleeps with Pythias' daughter, Aethra, conceiving Theseus. Medea, being a sorceress, understands immediately that Aegeus is fertile, but he needs a kind of magical push and a safe haven for the child that will result.
So Medea kneels to him, appeals to his vulnerability, and promises to cure his childlessness using her remedies. And by doing so, she's basically securing the future founding hero of Athens.
Aegeus agrees to provide sanctuary if she can reach Athens on her own, but Medea, she knows a simple promise isn't enough. She insists he must bind himself with a sacred oath.
And this is most important event number 3, the Aegis Oath.
Yes, the oath has to be sworn by the earth, by Helios, her divine grandfather, and the whole pantheon. This is Medea ensuring the highest divine protection possible. Aegis has to promise never to expel her or deliver her to her enemies, even under pressure from Corinth.
This oath is the fulcrum of the entire plot, isn't it? It's her exit ticket, her legal and religious guarantee of impunity.
Without it, she would never have committed the final unspeakable crime.
And with her escape now secured, the two-part plan is confirmed. First, poison gifts for the princess delivered by her sons.
And second, the infanticide, to deny Jason his legacy and his entire lineage.
Which brings us to scene 4. The scene of marital rhetoric, where Jason just walks directly into Medea's trap, still smugly confident in his own righteousness.
He arrives not to apologize, but to chastise Medea for her savage temper. And he offers her money for her exile.
As if that solves anything.
Right. And then he launches into this notorious self-serving justification. He argues that Medea wildly overstates her own role. He claims the real credit goes to Aphrodite and Eros, and that she actually gained more than she gave by coming to a land of culture and justice, not some tribal swamp.
Which is a clear, incredibly insulting reference to her Colchian heritage.
It is, and this is where he exposes his completely calculating nature, his defense for the royal marriage. He claims it was solely for security and prosperity, not for lust, not a slight against her, but to ensure their sons would have royal brothers for future safety.
It's this cold, utilitarian approach that just shows his complete failure to understand sacred commitment. And then he drops the ultimate misogynistic bomb.
The famous line, "If we could produce children some other way, without the need of women, then believe me, all human misery would end."
Wow. Eurípides is doing two things there, isn't he? He's painting Jason as a truly detestable, self-serving villain.
And he's delivering a stinging critique of the deeply patriarchal, sometimes anti-woman attitudes that were prevalent in 5th century Athens. He's using the barbarian, Medea, to judge the so-called civilized Greek.
So Medea executes the final, necessary phase of her manipulation. She feigns complete submission, admits she was a foolish woman driven by temper. She asks Jason to plead with the princess to let their children stay.
And most important event number 4 occurs when Medea sends the children with the poisoned gifts. These are the silk dress and the golden coronet, heirlooms from her grandfather, the sun god Helios.
She's using her own boys as vectors for death. She ensures the princess is close to the fatal oil, and that the last things Jason's new wife sees are the children he promised to protect.
And the gifts themselves are potent symbols. They're beautiful, expensive. They represent the lure of vanity and wealth, the very things Jason prioritized over honor.
And they're soaked in fatal oil. Medea knows that the princess, driven by feminine vanity, won't be able to resist putting on the royal trappings, not even with her father's warnings about the sorceress who sent them.
Not a chance.
Okay, scene 5. This is where the horror is delivered off stage, but it's brought violently to life by the messenger's speech. Jason's servant bursts in, confirming the double murder.
The messenger is gasping. He confirms the princess and Creon are dead, and then he launches into a truly detailed, gruesome report. It's a necessary convention because, while the murder itself was off stage, the audience needed to experience the terror viscerally.
And the princess at first is delighted. She puts on the crown and gown. But that joy instantly turns to agony.
The description is terrifying. The gold crown streams with molten flame, and the silk gown begins eating into her clear flesh. She runs, shaking her head, but the gold is welded tight to her skull. Her eyes melt, her face is gone. The poisoned flesh drips off like resin from a pine torch.
It's slow, agonizing, and completely supernatural.
It is. And then King Creon stumbles in, finds his daughter, embraces her, and wishes he could die with her.
But by embracing her, he seals his own doom.
As he tries to struggle up, he finds he's stuck fast to the poisoned gown like ivy clings to a laurel branch. Trying to get free just tears the old flesh from his bones. The messenger emphasizes that Creon breathed his last only when his body was utterly shredded by the venom in his own desperate struggle.
So this is most important event number 5, the detailed, gruesome report. It solidifies Medea's power as a fiend in fury who wields this divine, unholy poison. The sheer visceral detail ensures the audience understands the horrific scale of her revenge.
And the messenger's concluding reflection is fascinating. He notes that those we call most clever are the greatest fools because no mortal man is happy. Lucky, yes. Prosperous, perhaps, but happy, never.
He has witnessed the total collapse of security and prosperity, proving Jason's entire utilitarian premise wrong.
Absolutely.
Medea's revenge against the adults is complete, but now she faces the final, unutterable crime.
Scene 6, the final, most monstrous stage of the tragedy. Before she acts, Medea enters into this brutal internal monologue.
This is where we see that intense struggle between her thumos, her raging passion, and her logos, her reason.
She acknowledges the crime is awful but necessary. She recognizes the wickedness, yet she commits the act purely to inflict maximum everlasting pain on Jason.
She explicitly states that her rage in my heart is stronger than my reason.
She knows the monstrosity of infanticide, but she cannot let her enemies laugh at her. Her status and her honor demand this ultimate sacrifice. She prefers the psychological destruction of Jason to the simple safety of her own children.
And we hear the cries off stage, confirming the infanticide is underway, a sound that would have just chilled the 15,000 spectators.
Jason returns. He's rushing to save the boys from Creon's vengeful family, realizing his fatal mistake way too late.
He finds the doors barred. He hears the screams of his dying sons.
And then, most important event number 6, divine escape and final confrontation. Medea appears above the stage, dramatically lifted by the machine. She's in the chariot of Helios, her divine grandfather, holding the corpses of her sons in triumph.
That is the ultimate dramatic irony, the machine that's reserved for the appearance of gods and for divine resolution. It's used here to elevate a child murderer and sanction her escape. She is literally shielded by Olympus.
And Medea, high above the stage, denies Jason the ultimate right, the right to touch or bury their sons. For an Athenian audience where proper burial rites were sacrosanct, this denial, leaving the dead unburied, is a deeply shameful and lasting curse.
The final exchange is just devastating. Jason, stripped of everything, is reduced to calling her a lion bitch and a she-witch, recognizing the fatal error in bringing a powerful, angry barbarian into Greece.
And Medea justifies the murder entirely as punishment for Jason's broken oath and the insult of your new marriage. She boasts, "I have split you open and reached your heart with this."
And she delivers that final prophecy. Jason will die ignobly. He'll be killed by a piece of rotting timber from his own ship, the Argo.
He will suffer a coward's death, emphasizing the total erasure of his heroic past. Medea then disappears into the sky with the corpses and the divine protection of Helios.
And Jason is just left there, on an empty stage, utterly deracinated, empty-handed, weeping, reduced from hero to zero by his own expediency.
It's a stark image. Medea systematically eradicated Jason's past, that's Peleus, its present, with Creon and the princess, and his entire future with his sons. She left him with no lineage, no honor, no place.
And that systematic destruction, the completeness of her vengeance, that's what gives the play its horrifying power, isn't it? Even 2,500 years later, the accuracy and depth of the characterization and the marital friction that give their scenes this uncomfortable power.
It suggests that when it comes to volatile human emotions and relational betrayal, not much has changed.
This brings us to the profound ethical problem that Euripides just leaves us with. Medea committed an ethically repugnant crime, infanticide. The worst crime against the Greek concept of philia, of familial love. Yet she escaped, protected by the gods.
The source notes that Helios' chariot, that Deus Ex Machina, is the very vehicle of divine justice. It is explicitly punishing Jason's oath-breaking. So Euripides forces the audience to confront a truly uncomfortable moral reality. Divine justice does not align with human justice.
So the goddess Hera wanted Peleus punished, and Jason's betrayal of Medea was just the instrument used to bring that punishment about.
Yes. So the gods, by sanctioning Medea's rage, are upholding the sanctity of the oath, even at the cost of innocent lives and what we would call human morality. It compels us to confront the complexity of Medea's immense suffering and Jason's ruthless selfishness.
So if knowledge is most valuable when it's understood and applied, what moral principle, if any, survives the wreckage of Corinth?
It seems that in this tragedy, the only certainty is that breaking a sacred oath has eternal, lethal consequences.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought. It reflects on the chorus, who represent conventional morality. The chorus notes that excessiveness brings mortals no advantage. That's the voice of reason, of prudence, of moderation.
Yet Medea, through radical, destructive excess, achieved the complete annihilation of her enemy. She secured her status and she escaped unpunished with divine sanction. She ignored all advice of moderation and won her vengeful victory.
So what does this tragedy ultimately teach us about the true power and the true danger of radical moderation versus radical destructive passion?
And what price are the gods willing to exact to protect their own honor? That is the question Euripides leaves hanging in the air for you to explore as you consider the legacy of this chilling and timeless work.
Thank you for allowing us to take this deep dive into your sources on Euripides' Medea. We hope this comprehensive analysis proves invaluable.